back. The Republicans' lead negotiator, Oklahoma Senator James Lankford. Senator Lankford, you're very kind to come back. We saw you last week. I mean, there was a Wall Street Journal story yesterday. Don't know if it's true or not, but they said some progress might be in the works. And I want to ask you specifically, I mean, you tell me if there's any progress or not, but specifically, they mentioned a Title 42 type expulsion law, it's being called, like Title 42. So that would allow the government to turn away asylum seekers, turn them away. Now, I would think that's more like remain in Mexico, but maybe you can tell me what the nuances are. There'll be thresholds, numerical thresholds, or maybe they'll be held in detention centers. I don't know. But that's what I read in yesterday's Wall Street Journal. Actually, it was online last night, and it was in today's paper. Is any of that true, Senator Lankford, first of all?
So none of it's true till it's actually written down and we can get a chance to be able to pass it around. There's been a lot of ideas that have been laid out, and I would tell you that's been something I've been an advocate for from the very beginning. You don't actually control your border if you're the number of people that come across your border each day is managed by a criminal organization in the Mexican cartels. Right now, Mexican cartels run our border, not the United States of America. I want to turn that back on its head so the United States actually makes decisions who comes over our border, not a criminal organization. So that is one of the ideas. But again, until we actually get agreement, we can write it down, pass it out, everybody can get a chance to see it. Nothing's really settled. So there are some good ideas that we've laid out there. We're waiting to be able to actually get the White House to actually sign a piece of paper and say this is what we're going to do.
How's that different, Senator, from Trump's idea, which worked so well for several years, of remain in Mexico?
So Remain in Mexico required a bilateral agreement with Mexico that they had to actually agree how they were going to handle, what they were going to do on it. This administration, the Biden administration, actually was forced by the courts to also do Remain in Mexico, but they did it so bulky and so complicated that there was something like 47 people that they actually managed and hundreds of millions of dollars that they spent on the process on it. So my focus is depends on the administration on what you're going to do and how they're going to handle it. If you set up authorities, though, that make it really clear, regardless of your administration, that's a better way to be able to do it at this point. Again, if we've got Trump, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, any Republican, quite frankly, in the White House, they would handle this border incredibly different than how this administration's handling it.
Yeah, for sure. So as you reimagine Remain in Mexico, it resurfaces as Title 42. But Title 42, you know, Title 42 was a health measure, and I dare say, I think you're going to agree, there's a lot of health issues that are still tied up with all the, Biden's illegal immigration policies. So I just was kind of saying, well, gee whiz, golly, you're going to need both. You need Remain in Mexico or remain someplace other than the United States, and you need a new Title 42 to deal with health issues.
Yeah, so this is not a health-related, this is an authority-related. I think that people are comparing it to Title 42 because that's something they're used to, and they actually saw during the pandemic how it actually worked. But it really is, how do you actually control your own border? Yesterday, there were 10,781 people that crossed the border. 9,000 of those were between the ports of entry. There's no way to be able to manage that. Literally thousands of those people were literally fingerprinted, their name was written down, and they were released into the country by the thousands yesterday. That has to stop. That's a national security risk. And if you're outside of Washington, you understand it. If you're inside Washington, you think that border security is a political issue. No one outside the 202 area code thinks this is a political issue. It's a national security issue.
And okay, absolutely right. So the next thought I had is, as you're reimagining these things or relabeling these things, is there any money that is reimagined into this bill that might build out the wall, which was done, in part by a former president who wishes to be president again? But as you pointed out before, as far as I can tell, all the Republican candidates would like a wall. The H.R. 2 bill coming out of the House wanted a wall. Has the wall made a new appearance?
I would say here's the challenge we have in the wall. This administration, the Biden administration, used their wall funding that was set aside that had 5-year funding. President Trump was using that to actually build a wall. This administration was using those same dollars to do environmental remediation around the wall. So you add wall dollars to them, and they will find ways to not actually spend it on building fencing. You add those same dollars to someone who is determined on national security, it's very, very different. So we have to think smart in this and what we're actually trying to include. I would tell you right now, the Biden administration, based on how that bill was designed 5 years ago, is compelled to build several miles of wall that they're actually building right now because of actually how that original bill was built, was designed. But it took them 3 years to actually struggle through to be able to get to this spot that literally attorneys have told them the rest of the money has to actually be used for wall. So they've been squandering a lot of it. But we've got to actually get real security. And honestly, there are places that you can walk around the wall that we're never going to get wall in canyons and mountains and other areas. Our policy is a better determination rather than wall, though the Border Patrol definitely wants more wall.
Well, I think it's very clever to use wall money for climate change. Very clever. Mr. Lankford, where does it stand now? I guess the weekend is upon us. Maybe the Senate will meet tomorrow. I don't know. Maybe they'll stay the weekend. Maybe they'll have cots in the floor. I mean, you tell us. Where does this thing stand?
No cots in the floor this time. The Senate actually finished its last vote of the week just a few minutes ago, actually. I'm going to remain here and continue to be able to go through the negotiations. Most of my colleagues are actually heading out. I'm not the only Republican in this negotiation. There's multiple others that are going through. I'm just the tip of the spear in the final negotiation process. But there's Republicans in the House and the Senate that are all giving input as we try to be able to work through this process. We're going to keep working. I have to tell you, I'm very skeptical that it's actually going to be finished just because the White House continues to drag their feet on text. If we don't have text, we're not going to actually move. They can say orally what they agreed to, but until we actually see it in writing, that's a very different issue.
And I take it President Biden and or at least his senior White House staff is finally engaged, or is that untrue?
I have not seen President Biden yet in any of the negotiations, nor been invited to actually personally negotiate with him. Some of his staff have been engaged in this. That's helpful. Obviously, Senate Democrats and House Democrats want to know the White House is engaged in this process as well. That gives them some reassurance that they're not going to go out on a limb that the president's not going to support. So we're working through this process, getting everybody at the table.
All right. Well, I guess I wish you luck. It's a hell of an assignment for you. Christmas.
Yeah, it's a pain to be able to deal with. It's not just a Merry Christmas present to me on it, but it absolutely has to be done with 10,000 people a day crossing. We have got to stop this flow.
Well, if you ever did, Senator, it would be a fabulous Christmas present for the rest of America. I will say that. And you get high marks for your service in pursuit of this, what I'm going to call reimagined border policy. Senator James Lankford of the great state of Oklahoma. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Larry.
You bet.